I'm Alan Robarge, a relationship coach. Welcome to Improve Your Relationships, where I like to talk about attachment injuries and healing attachment trauma. And on this video, let's talk about the collusion of self-betrayal, or what I might also call the collusion to being ignored. It's going to be a somewhat complex dynamic. It's a bit hard to track, to make sense of what I'm sharing, so please bear with me. But we create, or due to the realities of life and being in relationship, we get ourselves into double binds. And a double bind makes it very impossible because it's usually two competing beliefs and truths that get hooked into each other, that are at odds, and that the solution is unattractive regardless if you turn left or if you turn right. So the understanding of a double bind, the definition would be this idea of between a rock and a hard place, or this idea of cannot turn left, cannot turn right, damned if you do, damned if you don't. So when we are in relationship and there is a falling short of emotional connection, there is not attunement, there is not emotional resonance, and that we know in this particular relationship, relational needs are not being met and will not be met. And for whatever reason, we're still hooked into staying connected with the other person. So the most simplistic answer, or a simplistic approach, is to say, well, no relationship is going to be able to survive these limitations when the emotional connection and emotional availability is so extremely lacking. Then we can conclude that the relationship is not going well and is not going to continue. So we would naturally say, well, time to end, time to move on. However, as we know, human beings are messy and relationships can be sticky and confusing, and we get embroiled in all of these different dynamics where we're still somehow connected to the other person, that we realize. I mean, an obvious example is a family member. You don't necessarily divorce your family, although I know many people have. But nonetheless, if you are still by right of being in the family together, there's an immediacy, a proximity. If you live in the same area, there is an expectation that by right of being family, that you're still connected. Or it could potentially also be a partner scenario, that you still are entertaining this idea. You're in a gray area of whether or not you're going to get back together, or if you're going to stay in relationship, or if the relationship is going to grow. Or perhaps it could be a parent of your child that you're co-parenting, and it's an ex-partner, but you're still in relationship to this other person, and that you're relying on a certain level of relationship in order to facilitate to create the best beneficial experience for your children, meaning as co-parents, and to negotiate what's needed in co-parenting. So in that sense, you're still on board with being in relationship. So what I want to point out in a double bind dynamic of being ignored emotionally, that when you speak to the dynamic in that you ask for it to change or be different, and in fact you're met with opposition or defensiveness, or just outright the other person that you're working with, the other person you're in relationship with, says to you, gives you the feedback, no, I cannot do that. I am not offering you emotional connection. I'm not going to join with you in an emotional attunement. I am not going to learn what emotional resonance is. This is how I react. This is how I respond. This is who I am. This is as good as it gets. And that this level, from your experience of non-relating or non-emotional connection, that is what is available. And again, from your perspective, it's going to feel like, well, nothing's really available. There's not an engagement of emotional exchange. But nonetheless, what I'm setting up in this scenario is that you have been conscious, you're aware of this situation, and you addressed it, you attempted to get your needs met, you attempted to explain the dynamic, and at the same time, the feedback that came back, either through non-participation or non-acknowledgement of your request, or you got a clear answer and the other person that you're speaking with was either directly or indirectly able to say, thanks, but no thanks. I'm not interested in emotional connection with you. That's not going to happen. Oh, by the way, we're still going to be in relationship because we're still part of the family, or we're still in relationship because of the kids, or whatever. Maybe this could also even be a friendship that you've created through work. And so you find yourself still working with this person, and it creates some confused boundaries and confusion around how can you maneuver and be in relationship when in fact the information that you've received is that there's a great limitation to the degree to which the other person wants to be in relationship. So that's the setup. I'm giving you this it's a bit of a dynamic or long setup to understand what has led up to this double bind. So what do I mean by the double bind is that you have consciousness, you have an awareness, you have a need, you have a knowing that there is a level of emotional relating that is possible and that you value and that you are striving for. And anything less can feel like being ignored or rejected, and it can trigger your nervous system in such a way that feels like you are being isolated or put out, and that there's this great gap. And this, oftentimes relationships focus on, well, let's work with the gap. Like, it's inevitable that we're going to miss each other. It's inevitable that we're going to disappoint each other. It's inevitable that we're going to misunderstand each other. And it's in those moments it creates the gap. And so oftentimes conscious relating, conscious relationship, and healing work is about how do we bridge the gap and how do we work within the painful disappointments that live in that gap. And oftentimes we can determine a healthy relationship is based upon the how wide is the disconnect, how wide is the gap. So we're not necessarily getting rid of the gap altogether, because we know that in some ways, being a human being, we know some of the realities of impermanence, the realities of disappointment, the realities of life brings with it degrees of suffering and discontent, and that's what we all label, that's all falls into the gap. But healthier relationships and successful relationships are ones where they have a gap that has somewhat manageable parameters. It's not too gigantic. And then at the same time, there's a consciousness, there's an awareness of like, well, we need to attend to the gap. We need to attend to the disappointment, which doesn't necessarily mean change it or, get rid of the disappointment. It really is then, what is my capacity to accept the disappointment? What's my capacity to work within that awareness? So we have told the other person, we've told our partner, the partner we're on the outs with, or our ex-partner, or someone we're still in the pseudo-relating with, I want more emotional connection. We've gotten the feedback that says, nope, that's not going to happen. And yet, for whatever reason, either by choice or life circumstance, we still find ourselves in this limbo state of trying to figure out, well, then how the heck do I reach out to you? How the heck can I be in relationship with you if I'm fully conscious and aware that you are rejecting my invitation to want to share different levels of emotional connection? So it immediately creates a riddle. Part of the challenge here is that the other person already said they're not going to participate in solving the riddle, so therefore all of the onus falls within you. That in and of itself can feel isolating and also crazy making, because it goes against the reality that relationship means to relate. It means that there's two people participating together, and we've already identified, the other person has announced that there are limitations and to the degrees to which they're going to participate. So here we have this legitimate need, the coming from a place of goodness, the nobility of relationship, the honesty of wanting to connect, and that we have the clarity, the courage, the wherewithal, the insight to say, hey partner, I want to acknowledge that we can drop down into deeper levels of emotional connection and emotional commitment, and emotional openness and emotional honesty. Are you on board? And the feedback that you got says, no, I'm not on board. I don't do that. I don't like to do that. I don't know how to do that. I don't want to do that. Whatever the feedback is, the answer is nope, it's not happening. So yet now you find yourself in a position where you're still relating to someone, but you know that there's not going to be a nourishing emotional exchange coming back your way. Here's the paradox, or here's the double bind, the place of collusion of self-betrayal and the collusion of being ignored. All of that was setting up for this moment. So what happens is that if you're still in relationship with the other person, they will initiate everyday relating. They will initiate conversation. They will participate in text messaging. They will participate in sending you emails. They will participate in sharing with you details. Let's say you're co-parenting, so they're going to participate in sharing details about the children and details about school. So you are interacting, and you are talking about events or things that are going on, but you simultaneously know that you are being ignored emotionally in the present moment as you're engaging. That you have this history of an acknowledged limitation where there's not going to be emotional interaction, emotional warmth, emotional attunement, emotional harmony, resonance. It's called limbic resonance. And if you know that that's not going to happen, then the relationship has profound emptiness to it. And you feel it. It is, and to the point that it is painful. That's probably why you're watching this video or any of my videos. The whole point of this is that this is legitimately painful. This is not even the construct. This is the reality that exists because by right of how our brains are mapped, how our nervous system is laid out, the neurophysiology of relationship, that when there is not a meaningful depth of emotional connection where I feel seen, known, heard, and understood, that will be painful. And it even manifests on a physical level. We feel it in our body that there is this separation. And our natural default setting is to notice the pain and to notice the gap and notice that we are not getting emotional connection. And we just naturally, it's coded into our brain. We naturally say, well, this is a problem. I have to solve it. I need to figure out how to increase emotional proximity. I need to figure out how to increase the degree of emotional openness so that our attachment needs, so that we are emotionally regulating each other, that we are joining in the phrase limbic resonance. Your brain matches up, and there is a shared experience that's going to feel synergistic, that's going to feel dynamic, that's going to feel, it's that phrase when people say, oh, I found my partner and I really felt like we were the one. You know, there's a merging, there's a softening in your body. You exhale, your muscles relax. It's the idea time flies when you're having fun, that when you're with this person and you're experiencing connection, whether you're talking or not talking, you really get a chance to be yourself. And that we exhale, that's literal, but that's also metaphorical. The metaphor of surrender. Oh, good, I get to be myself. Isn't that refreshing? Isn't that what we all want? I get to be myself. And can I be myself with you? And can you be yourself with me? And when we're able to be open and available to each other, that does profound things to our health and to our heart rate and to our blood pressure. It really enhances our physical health and our mental health, because I know there's a couple people in this world that I can exhale and relax with and just be myself. So what I'm referring to, what I'm talking about, is there is some kind of glitch in that system. There's some kind of obstacle that says that culminating experience of being able to emotionally be yourself is just not going to happen. It's not, perhaps if we're thinking in terms of family, it's not part of your family culture. It's not part of the family rules. It's not part of the family core beliefs. It might not be part of the family skill set. The family just doesn't do that. But there is that creates, again, from a neurophysiological perspective of survival, our attachment system was evolved out of survival, is that it sets off an alarm in our nervous system. Panic, 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 panic. I'm with this person. I'm supposed to be close. I want to be close. And when I say supposed to, I mean that in the sense of there's the natural ability of our attachment system to create closeness. And so we're participating in that natural process, and then we realize we bump up against the wall, or my language from earlier, we fall into the gap, and now we're like drowning in the gap, or there's some kind of obstacle where this is not happening. So nonetheless, the other person, if we're still having some kind of interaction, is going to respond with kind of everyday interaction. Text message, email, calling on the phone. We might even see this person and see this person, and we go to dinner. We're having dinner together. Again, whatever scenario, whatever context or relationship that it is. So these moments, let's imagine we're at dinner and we're talking. There's always going to be the damper and for many of us at this point, the crushing, I'll use the word crushing, the crushing grief and the crushing impossible non-option. It's the impossible non-option that no matter what kind of dinner we have, no matter how wonderful the restaurant is, no matter what is brought up, we are not going to share emotional attunement. We are not going to be emotionally open. We might be pleasant, we might be kind, we might be good people, we might be good conversationalists, we might like, sharing what's going on in our day. But we're going to notice we're really not emotionally open. So this moment, this consciousness creates so much inner turmoil for the person who is hungry for that level of interaction. And if the person who's hungry for that interaction pretends everything is okay and convinces him or herself that this is all that we can expect. I'm an adult. I'm going to come in from my mature place and just say, well, this sucks, but this is reality. And we're going to order dinner, and we're going to have dinner together anyway. For a number of us, that doesn't work. It works logically. It's, well, why can't you? Just have dinner. Just participate in acknowledging this is the degree, this is the state of the relationship. It is not ideal. It is not what you want. You have to work with your own disappointment. Accept reality, accept reality, accept reality. The reason why we can't accept reality is because it's linked into our nervous system, and that's provocative. It's like constantly being poked with a pin. And so you're sitting there and you're trying to have dinner, and at some point it's going to feel surreal and bizarre because it's going to feel like you're talking about nothing. We're talking about, what did you do today? Well, I did this and I did this and I went to this store and I ran this errand. I ran into this person. And chronology, details, this happened, this happened, this happened. But you're sitting there and you there's a part of you, whether conscious or not, or it's just under the surface in your subconscious of, we're not actually connecting. There's not actual connection here. We're not connecting. There's not emotional sharing. There is not a vulnerability. There is not an openness. And that's who I am. I know who I am because I share emotionally. I'm emotionally open, or because I want to share emotionally. I know who I am because I invite deeper levels of curiosity and reflection, and I'm able to sit and listen and exchange with you when you share your feelings and when you share your emotional presence. And I also know, as a human being, I value that. Not only is it who I am, and I value it, but it's something I do well. It's something that it's the best part of me. You know, it's not superfluous. It's not extra. It's not, something, like an add-on feature. It's like, no, it's the feature of my humanity. It's the feature that links to the depths of my goodness. And so if we're sitting there and I either, it's a bit subconscious, or I'm even aware of it, when those moments of we're not really interacting, I cannot accept that because my nervous system is poking me like a pin that's telling me something is off. Something is off. This thing we're doing, And I'm trying to override that and convince myself that, it's okay. I'm trying to override that and say, well, I just accept the person for who they are. This is what happens. This is how they want to be in a relationship. And so can I be okay with that? My mind might be okay with that, but my nervous system is being provoked because I feel the dissonance. I feel the disconnect. I feel the lack of emotional openness. And that feels like the person is guarded. That feels like the situation is guarded. That feels like there is something halting. It will feel arresting. It will feel stale. It will feel stagnant. It'll feel like we're fake. We're going through the motions of relating and connecting, but we're not really relating and connecting. So let's say you have awareness of this and you bring it up. You say, hey, this thing we're doing, it's not working. It's fake. We're not really having emotional openness. And you get the feedback that says, well, okay, well, that's just the way it is, and that's how things are going to be. And yet then you are expected, or it is assumed, or by right of circumstance, by right of circumstance, if you're still family members, that you're still going to engage. But what that means, that every time you choose to engage, even if it's something as simple as a text message, even if you decide to engage something as simple as a phone call, even if you decide to engage something as simple as just hanging out and going to dinner, it's going to simultaneously provoke and be experienced as a great loss. And it will provoke not only some new present moment, discomfort and suffering, but will link to the history of all of these failed experiences and failed attempts for connection, where you have multiple times repeatedly tried to ask for reciprocity. Ask for reciprocation. And it doesn't happen. So if you override that, it's this overriding thing that we have to do in our brain to make it work. Like, fine, let's just go to dinner. Fine. We won't talk about anything emotionally meaningful. I won't really surrender and reveal myself and share myself. I will shut down my beautiful, noble need as a human being to experiment with depths of attachment and emotional connection and sharing our vulnerabilities. Okay, fine, that's not going to happen. Let's go to dinner. But while I'm at dinner, I'm colluding in betraying my need. I'm colluding in betraying myself. When I engage in the text message about just talking about plans and details that are, again, on this more surface level, and we never address that this dynamic is living between us. Like, this is important to me. This thing, at this point, we just label it this dysfunctional construct. This dynamic is dysfunctional relating. And if we do not call attention to it, and it is assumed that we are just going to ignore it, it will be experienced as, oh, we're to ignore me. Okay, we have to ignore my needs, my request, my need for what I know is possible. And if I agree to ignoring that, I am simultaneously colluding and agreeing to ignore myself. That's the betrayal. That's the self-betrayal. That's the double bind. I'm screwed either way, because if I don't stay in relationship with this person and I just walk away and say, well, see you later, sayonara, then there's the loss and the grief of realizing, like, well, I have to give up that relationship. And then if I do stay, however, and I participate at the level in which it is being presented, I get to simultaneously, consciously participate in self-betrayal. What is attractive about that? There's nothing attractive about that. And if I do engage in self-betrayal, which is a kind of choosing to be in denial, choosing to go unconscious, choosing to diminish and override the discomfort of the situation, I'm still simultaneously, as I'm sitting at dinner, as I'm sitting if we're at a dinner where I'm sitting in the chair at the restaurant, I, in that present moment, will feel provoked. I will feel pain. I will feel like I'm being pricked with needles that are saying, this isn't right. There's something wrong here. Like, this feels so hurtful. It will activate our attachment distress. So then in that moment, I'm not having a reasonably okay dinner where we're just sharing some surface level conversation about nothing. In that moment, I'm enduring. I have to sit there and endure being provoked in my nervous system with this level of attachment distress, which shows up in a very physiological, tangible way as hormones, adrenaline hormones being released into my bloodstream. And now I'm sitting there and I am feeling restless and uncomfortable. And if there's a wave of emotion that comes into this beyond the physical aspects of panic or anxiety or the distress in your nervous system, the emotional component is going to feel these profound, very crushing feelings of abandonment, of isolation. It could even trigger shame, because we usually in this dynamic, the history is that we have been shamed for having these needs. You can't have this need. You can't get your need met. And the way that the child also manages their own discomfort around not having the need met is to shame themselves. Like, well, obviously I just get rid of the need. If I get rid of the need, it's bad that you want emotional connection, bad that you desire deeper emotional openness with a friend or family member or a loved one. So this whole dynamic is incredibly complex. It's a bit challenging for me to even capture it in this moment, to explain it on a video, but it can also be really confusing when you're sitting in the restaurant and your bloodstream is flooded with these hormones and you're trying to make sense, like, why am I having this incredibly uncomfortable, extreme response when I'm just sitting in the restaurant with this person that at this point, there's no confusion. Like, I know, we're pretty aware of, like the limitation of what is going to happen here. But even if I have that knowledge or that insight through my thinking brain, my limbic brain, the part of me, the part of my brain that is designed, that is designed to create, to link into a shared experience of empathy, and link into a shared experience of emotional resonance, and link into a shared experience of emotional knowing of each other's experience. That's not happening. And to sit there and to realize that whole part of my being is going to be denied is not something that you can just accept and be okay with, because it's a great loss and brings a profound grief. And even if you accept it, it still means that you're going to sit in the fire of having your nervous system provoked. And you're going to constantly loop around, and this is back to the idea of the double bind, you're just going to constantly loop back around to, this is unresolvable. Like, this is a riddle that just does not solve itself. Like, how can I make this work? The simple, I know many people then, sometimes on my videos, I map out these dynamics and we explain them, and then we get to this point, and then many people are at the place, yes, how do you make it work? How do you change it? Well, there's no easy answer. There's no easy answer, because relationships are complicated, and the other person must participate. And so it's not like you're supposed to come up with some special technique and special tool and figure out the math equation so that you can, solve it. Instead, it really requires sophisticated levels of participating in it with as a discipline, as a contemplative practice, as a meditation, and to say this is part of the realities of human suffering, and this is so painful. And it doesn't we don't just put together, come up with some great math equation and solve it. Oh, good, this is how I solve it, how I fix it. If you are at a place where you do need some very clear, tangible skill or tangible approach to say, what do you do? Well, in the most simple sense, you have to create a boundary and disconnect from being in a relationship. The best that you can do, it is not a attractive option, but it's saying there's no relationship here. There's no relationship here. When this dynamic is happening, where it's at your expense, where you get to marinate in a repetitive scenario of suffering, well, that is just masochistic if you want to do that for the next 25 years. And so usually that's when we have to say, I need to have a boundary. I need to say thanks, but no thanks. I need to distance myself. And even that is not, again, this is the double bind. That's not attractive. Imagine if it's your family member. Then you say, okay, family member, I guess we are not going to have a relationship. I mean, how painful is that? And how illogical. It's so illogical because, at least, for you and me in this moment, we can name the dynamic. We know what's going on. So it's always like, well, let's just tweak the dynamic. Let's just introduce some new components. And it very clearly there needs to be a willingness on both people's part. There needs to be a willingness to bridge the gap and to participate in, or experiment. The word I really like is experiment. To experiment with different levels of emotional openness, emotional attunement, emotional harmony, emotional warmth, emotional openness, that ultimately makes each other vulnerable, and it's scary. That's why people don't want to do this. It's scary. And if I'm emotionally open and vulnerable with you, then oh shit, I have to be emotionally vulnerable and open with myself. And I'm just sort of not prepared to be able to go into those different places of my inner being, my inner world, or my psyche. And that if I let in the flow and organic nature of emotional exchange with another person, that means I'm going to have to let in the flow and the emotional exchange that's going on within myself, in my inner world, and that inevitably is going to open up those compartmentalized places of the things that I don't want to feel. And if we have created a personality construct, if we created some inner construct of compartmentalization that says, I'm not going to feel my grief, I'm not going to feel my sadness, I'm not really going to feel my own shame, I'm not going to feel the groundlessness of the reality of existence, I'm not going to feel my history of being rejected and being ignored in relationship. And because I have decided that I will not feel those feelings, that means I have a limitation and I am not able to go to experiment in emotional exchange with another person if that, in fact, I have that very strong internalized boundary. And it's usually about self-protection. You know, we are protecting ourselves in that moment, or the other person that we're with. Can have compassion and say, well, they're protecting themselves from having to feel their own discomfort around their own feelings. Well, it's great to know that. It's great to have compassion. But at the end of the day, just because we have compassion and know that, that's not going to change your very unsatisfying experience of trying to sustain being in relationship with this other person, when this dynamic is present. So all of this, everything I'm describing, is what I refer to as, colluding with your own self-betrayal, colluding with being ignored, getting lost in this double bind of how can I possibly maintain some kind of relationship, yet when it feels like it's repeatedly at my own expense. And once I know this and I keep signing up to accept this, well, I'm actually belittling my own need. And we do that enough and it will feel like we're belittling ourselves, we're belittling our spirit. And this is what it means when people say, oh, I lost myself in the relationship. And this is what people mean when they say, I became a shell of myself in this relationship. And this is what people mean when they say, I just felt so incredibly empty and dissociated, like I just wasn't even there. And I was so empty. Well, that's what happens. And then we just, go to Applebee's and order an onion blossom and smile and laugh and pretend everything is okay. Even though your body is saying, everything is not okay. I do not want to be in a relationship like this. This is dysfunctional. This is unhealthy. This is hurtful to me. And I cannot solve the riddle alone. I cannot be the only one who's trying to make this level of emotional exchange happen. And if I have consciousness and I have knowledge, I know emotional exchange is valid and real and exists. It is not superfluous. It is not extra. It is not something that only people do in a monastery, in Tibet when they're meditating. It is a part of everyday experience. And it can be fluid and simple and beautiful. And it's those moments where we actually connect and we exhale and we're able to be ourselves, and that is so freeing, and that's what we want in relationship. And that moment, that experience, that's what I label that church. I say that's when we have church, and we come together. And I had this lovely friend in Chicago, her name is Paula, and Paula and I would go to a coffee shop, and we'd call up on the phone to make arrangements and say, hey, do you want to have church today? And Paul would say, yes, I want to have church. And we'd go to a coffee shop and we would just chat. Sometimes it was silly. Sometimes it was meaningless. Other times it was processing our feelings and listening to each other. And I can tell you, Paula gives good church. I mean, we really were able to have these synchronous, dynamic, there's these moments of these transcendent moments where meaning opens up. And that was my friend. That's an experience of having an emotional connection with a friend. And when we've had that and we know it exists, that's what we value and that's what we're striving for. And it can become very, very, very painful when we're trying to explain this to someone else that we love and care about and we want to be in a relationship with, if the other person is not really getting it or does not even want to get it. And then that brings in the crushing grief, because you could imagine an example of me calling Paula, where I call her and say, Paula, do you have church? And she says, I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm not interested. I mean, there's just an immediate disappointment, an immediate oh, okay. Okay, great. We could still get together and have a sandwich, but it certainly would not be as uplifting and powerful as I just described. So this is the dynamic. This really creates so much havoc in everybody's life, many people's lives, and it's painful, painful stuff. And quite honestly, it's confusing. It's really hard to track all of these pieces of the dynamic, and the fact that it's cyclical and perpetual, just keeps cycling through. And even when you've handled it one way, one day, one situation, you're presented with it again next week or the next day, and it's still just, in a sarcastic, joking way, we could say, well, this is the gift that keeps on giving. I mean, this suffering, this level of discontent, this riddle, this double bind is a gift that just keeps on giving. So good luck to you in working with this. Take care of yourself. This is the place of honesty and compassion, and that you do not belittle yourself or diminish or dumb down your needs. And you have to hold true to saying, I value church, and this is what is possible, and I need it in this world with other people, and I'm not going to wait around for the people who I am in relationship with who very clearly are denying even having curiosity. You don't need to know how to do it. You don't need the skill to be able to do it. You need the curiosity to say, wow, that's interesting. I would like to have church. I would like to, experiment with what the heck that means and what that feels like. I'm on board. There's a willingness. That's what we're looking for in a partner. That's what we're looking for in a family member. That's what we're looking for in an ex-partner who wants to stay in relationship with us for whatever reason. There needs to be some curiosity and some willingness to go there. And oftentimes the origin and such a great big component of why we are looping in this flavor of suffering is that we are attempting to be in relationship with someone who very clearly will not go there. So compassion to you, empathy to you, self-kindness to you, compassion to the other person, self-kindness to, or kindness to the other person. I mean, this is all about suffering for everybody. Nobody wins here. However, focus on compassion. Focus on finding some nourishment and connection out in the world with other places, other sources, other relationships that of people who do want to have church with you. I hope that this was helpful. I hope that it's meaningful and makes sense. And please leave a comment. Subscribe to this YouTube channel. I am growing my subscriber list with viewers, and every time I upload a new video, you will be alerted with a lovely message in your inbox that a new video has been uploaded. If you want to hear more videos just like this one, please subscribe. Also, to give you a heads up, I am creating a community, a membership website that is focused on community, that is going to be a place to talk about these dynamics and to explore these dynamics. If this interests you, at the time of this video, I have yet to launch that membership site, but it's in the works, and I'm creating a program out of it in some structured way to move through this content, and so that it really enhances our ability to talk about these ideas. If that interests you, go to my website, and there's a community page, and on the community page there is going to be some information about this new membership website that I'm creating. If you want to be alerted when this is happening, and there will be a limited number of people in this group, and when I reach that number, we are closing the doors, and it will only, perhaps every 2 months, invite some new members. But once there's a core community, it's not going to grow very big. I want to keep it at a particular number and really, really deepen into our ability to explore these ideas. If that interests you, the title of that program is the same title of my videos, which is called Improve Your Relationships. So if you want to be a part of the Improve Your Relationships membership site community, go to my website and get on my email list. There's a opt-in box at the bottom of the page. Give your name, give your email address, and that way I can email you when it launches, or when, even if we've already launched at this point, when we open the doors and let in some new members. Please know that is a resource and available to you. I'm Alan Robarge. I'm a relationship coach. Thanks for watching, and I will see you on the next video.